It is corporate America and how to get to the top. I know that's why you all came, right? So I'll bring Kike back on the stage to moderate, and Rhonda Scales-Thacker, the GVP, Enterprise Technology and Architecture at Gartner, as well as Marlene Pelage. I will learn how to say it before the end of the night, I promise. Marlene, the Global CFO Officer of Media Brands, for our next session. Thank you all.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. I agree with Rob. I think most of you are here to understand how to get to the top of corporate America. Can I get a woo? Okay. So excited to have you both here. Please take a seat. Both Marlene and Rhonda, they are at the top of corporate America. Are you at the top of corporate America?
I guess by some definition, you would say that.
I guess that is the first question. What does getting to the top mean to you?
So at first, being at the top is very subjective, and each of you can define what that means. And it also evolves throughout your career. For example, early career, to me, the top was being surrounded by strong peers, strong managers that could equip me with the tools to prepare me for that next step. And then mid-career, being at the top, is having flexibility to raise my kids, to be at soccer games, et cetera. And now, being at the top means having a really strong team that has confidence in you, in your delivery, in your guidance, as well as just having the opportunity to be yourself at work. I know that came up earlier, so having a strong corporate culture is extremely important to me. So again, being at the top, you will define it differently as you move throughout your career.
Oh, that is powerful. Marlene?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, good afternoon, everyone, by the way. It's Marlene Pelage. Nice to meet everyone. I would agree. I think just first and foremost, optionality is really important in the context of really having freedom in terms of what you want to do with your life. But I think for me, it's really around having a platform to make an impact, whether it is impacting the trajectory of the organization you're working for, whether it is around impacting the culture and shaping it, whether it is around really enabling folks to actually have a fulfilling life, empowering them to really fulfill their potential. And it could also be really related, being at the top could be related to a passion that you have. If you happen to be a technology, scientifically inclined person, it could also be being in an organization where you actually get to create and design new products or services, and that's really what makes you go in. But the top, and however you want to define it, is really deeply personal.
Amazing. And the key thing, one thing I always like to do is I want you to tell us about your achievements. Tell us about the route you've taken to be where you are today. And don't be humble. Let us all know who you are. Let's start with Rhonda.
I've always been willing and look for new opportunities and to do just really hard things. And usually, I know we talked about imposter syndrome. It doesn't mean it goes away as you climb, for one. But it's just, my career has been amazing. I've been able to work with just an amazing group of people, humble, that has been willing to pour into me, and have had a great group of managers, whether it was, throughout my career. I started my career 25 years ago in finance, and then I moved over to IT about 10 years ago. So it's just surrounding yourself with mentors and just strong peers that you feel that you can have brainstorming sessions with. Learning never stops. So for me, that is, as I look throughout my career, I'm always thinking about the next big thing. And I'm sure everyone in this room has heard ChatGPT over the past 2 weeks. So I currently have AI coming out of my ears. But it's so exciting. So it's just having the opportunity to, look at these new opportunities and really just learning as much as you can about it, and then also taking others along the way with you, right? So if I'm learning this new technology, how about I make sure that I am growing up a team to also support this technology? Because at the end of the day, when I go home or when I'm on vacation, I want to have a strong team that can still keep everything running, right? And I already know that, being a Black woman in IT, as an executive, that is not the norm. So when I leave, I want to make sure that there's going to be opportunities for someone else that looks like me to continue to grow in that space.
Amazing. Marlene?
So let's talk about roots. I'm definitely Afro-Caribbean. I was born in Martinique. You obviously could see that I don't have an American accent. So my story is really one of a migrant. It's a migrant story. Insofar as I left the island of Martinique when I was 17 and started studying in France. I studied business school and pursued my higher education here in the US, and I think I really made a difference. Similarly to Rhonda, I started working in the financial services space many, many moons ago. And I think what really made a difference in terms of where I am today is really having made a decision to seek out opportunities on the global stage. Starting in New York, I spent about 7 years in Hong Kong. Then I just went through London for 2 years before coming back to the US. I had a detour. I started my own company, wine business, up in Napa for a couple of years, only to realize it was an amazing opportunity, but I worked my tail off 16, 18 hours, and it was not sufficient to pay for the babysitting bills. I had 3 children, which is when I decided to go back to the corporate world, and I started working at Charles Schwab in 2005. And over the course of the ensuing 16 years and through a variety of different job opportunities, and maybe we'll talk about that in a second, rotations, I became the first female CFO of the Charles Schwab Bank Corporation.
Wow. Let's give a round of applause.
And because I don't rest my laurels, in the midst of a pandemic, decided to uproot my entire family, switch industry. I was in finance for 30 years and decided to seek out new opportunities in the media and advertising world, which is when I joined IPG and became a global CFO of their media enterprise.
Wow. So I got a few things in there kind of about just switching industries, having that flexibility, and also just kind of knowing that what you want to do. So what are your top 3 tips for everyone here today to, again, get to the top, but whatever top means for them? Let's start right now.
Be open. Don't close the door, right? There's going to be things throughout your career that we've all had it, where someone says, okay, I want you to take on this project. And you're like, 1, I don't want to work with this person. 2, it's not the topic I want to cover, but do it anyway. Because usually you end up learning something that you never even imagined. So continue to, pour into yourself by just being open to those opportunities. So that's the first thing, be open. 2, be hungry. Keep learning. I am always listening to TED Talks and just reading different articles about, if I know I'm having a challenge with something, at least 50,000 other people have as well, because sometimes we feel alone, where if you're struggling with something, you're like, I am the only person that ever has had this problem before. So, be hungry and be willing to explore. And the third thing is just keep pulling people along with you. That is how you grow what this room looks like, right? And I know on the last panel, and as well as you mentioned earlier, is not having the environments. This is the first time I've had the opportunity to speak, with a group of people that all look like me, that all look like my daughters, who are actually sitting right there.
Wow.
But so, usually in these forums, no one looks like me, right? So, or very few. So it truly is an honor to be here and sharing with all of you. So, I can't say enough of pulling someone else along with you, because being that mentor, for that new college student, et cetera, and just, bringing them up and introducing them to careers they never thought about, et cetera. So especially when it comes to things like STEM or at this point, any area that they decide that they want to excel in. But just, be a mentor for someone, be a brainstorming partner for someone. That goes a long way.
Wow, so powerful. And Marlene?
Yeah, second that entirely. It's an honor to be here and speaking to you and sharing sort of a, life lessons. So for me, in terms of 3 tips, the first one is what I call put A+ into the efforts. And it's related to grit and determination. And there's an American psychologist, you can Google her name is Angela Lee Duckworth. She does amazing work working at the University of Pennsylvania. And she's done extensive research around what is a singularly most important success factor. And she studied academia, she studied sports, corporate America. And essentially she said that grit, which is a combination of passion and perseverance, towards a singularly important goal is the most deterministic factor of success. So what it means really for you and perhaps for me is regardless of what you're asked to do, whether it is organizing a filing room or conduct a due diligence or organize a trip or the founder of the most successful financial services company in the world or even preparing for a board meeting, you really have to lean into the effort and your research, and really study about the environment. It will ensure that you perhaps will be sticking the landing, but more importantly, it will establish yourself to your colleagues, your boss, and your boss's boss, which is really important, as someone who is accountable, dependable, and always prepared. So first lesson is A+ into the effort. The second tip for me is really around taking risks. They have to be calculated, but you do have to take some risks. And I think I heard that in a previous panel. The way I would define it is really to travel the least traveled path. I mentioned I left Martinique at the age of 17. At 20, I moved to Hong Kong. I knew no one there. And 2 years ago, I uprooted my family. Every single time, it was a decision that was difficult, that was almost traumatic. But I knew that if I sought that path, it would create optionality. I would actually learn new skills. I would meet new folks, I would make new relationships, and it would actually give me skill sets that would be perhaps helpful down the road. And tip number 3, I think we talked about relationships and networking, really important, but for me, it's really around speaking truth to power. Speak truth to power. Make sure you do your research, make sure you are really well anchored in the facts and the patterns. But I think when you do your research and you actually really challenge conventions and you really establish yourself as an authority in the room, you actually create credibility that can really transcend differences. And whether it's linguistic differences, whether it's accent differences, whether it's color differences, credibility and authenticity and really integrity are really important. So speak truth to power would be my third tip.
Thank you both. And when I say kind of executive presence, when I say high performance, and then throw in the word imposter syndrome, what do they all mean to you? And how can people navigate getting to the top, but with those 3 things? Let's start with Rhonda.
It's always a work in progress. You're not going to wake up one morning and say, I will no longer have imposter syndrome. I have executive presence. It's something you always want to have the tools available so that you can continue to work on those things. Some days you may come, like today, for example, right? It's like, okay, executive presence. And then I walked up those steps and I was like, oh my gosh, like there's lights and you were all looking at me, right? So it's a work in progress. And I know someone mentioned, we keep talking about the other panel, but just give yourself some grace. Growth is going to be evolving throughout your entire career, right? And as you're constantly trying to make these improvements and be a work in progress, remember life is also happening outside of that career. So I always say I work to live, right? And I think that's so incredibly important, in the age of just being, so super anxious, especially in, this recession tone environment. And we just put so much pressure on ourselves of, I have to get better, I need that next job, et cetera. Just give yourself some grace, allow yourself to grow. And imposter syndrome, executive presence, all of those things will continue to be something that's on your to-do list. And just look at it, I look at it more so as a timeline. Next year, I'm going to be a better Rhonda than I am today, because that's what growth is about.
Amazing, thank you.
I'll actually keep it really simple. When you hear executive presence, there's presence. So just be present, show up. That's simply show up on time. Mm-hmm. That's important. I think it's really and show up even early if you need to. And in terms of executive presence, it's really around active listening. When you're in a room surrounded by your colleagues, executives, if you even lead into the conversation, there are so many years, I'm not sure whether you had that experience, when I would walk into the room and I would actually pick the seat, behind the spare chair, because, that table was surrounded by men. Mm-hmm. No one looked like me. I was the only person of color. I've been so many times. And one day I decided, you know what? I'm just going to sit at the table. I'm just leaning into it, not like this, but really leaning into the conversation and paying attention, asking questions. Asking questions can be a really formidable power to really create that connection. And I would say also just make sure you follow up. Follow up. If you offer to do something, however trivial it might be, sending an article or whatever, just do it, a recipe or a good movie, just do it. And that's how you establish your executive presence over time.
I feel like I have 1,001 questions, but we don't even have enough time. And I know people must have some Q&A questions as well. Yeah, I'm getting some nods that there's a lot of questions. So the last question I like to ask, we can all see here we are black women and we all have families. I have a daughter who's 10 months old as well. How have you been able to get the balance? And, what advice can you give for everyone here today about having that balance and be able to still pursue your career and your family life as well?
So first, there's no such thing as work-life balance, in my opinion. It is called work-life compromise, because some days I felt like I was a terrible mom because I'm in my office 16 hours a day, right? But the next day, I was a great mom because I showed up to every game, I cooked dinner, I did all of those things. So, it's hard to, when they say balance, each day it will not be in balance, because if that's the way you wake up and that's your mindset, you're going to feel like you failed. At least that's how I felt it's when you're looking at the scale and you're thinking about balance. It does not exist. On Monday, maybe I was a better mom. On Wednesday, I was a better associate at work, right? But each day brings something new. And it's just each day is a compromise, right? But at the end of the day, I think I, raised some pretty brilliant daughters, and I still have a job. So I think it's good. So I think it's working out okay.
Congratulations.
Yeah. I would agree with the word compromise. I would say that I'm a single parent of 3 children, one of whom is handicapped. So I think the sort of intensity of what I had to do was, particularly challenging. But I think for me, the first rule was to surround myself with a village. And I mentioned I'm a migrant, so my family wasn't even here with me. But I surrounded myself with really trusted friends. And I volunteered in the community, and wherever I had help during the week when I was working, I would obviously give back on the weekends and make sure I was there. Also, I would say that over-indexing on quality versus quantity makes a big difference. And when I was with my kids, I was 100%, 1,000% there with them. And I also engaged in ways I could, whether it was, joining a board for the school, or even being a soccer team manager and Boy Scout leader. I did everything I could, so actually I would be there for them in different shape and forms. But it is really around the compromise, and I think we should ask them if they were here. We would ask them, but we have an amazing relationship now. The young adults, and I think it's maybe a testament that it worked out as well.
Wow, so inspiring. Can we get a round of applause, please? Amazing. Let's get some Q&A.
Cool. To make sure we stay on track, we're only going to ask 2 questions. So ChatGPT was mentioned earlier, and with the rapid evolution of technology and globalization, how can professionals stay relevant and organically creative?
Okay, so ChatGPT, to me, as the media, picked up on it, and it's each day you wake up, you see it on, whether it's Good Morning America, whatever your news source is, it's in your face. But, for example, right now I'm actually leading AI, the AI approach at my company today, and it will not replace humans, right? So there's certain things that you can ask a question, and also you have to remember ChatGPT is built off of large language models, which means you enter something, it's learning from you. It's learning from everyone that is inputting information into these sources. So it's the best way I can explain it is, for example, do you believe everything you see posted on Facebook, right? Sometimes it's factual, sometimes it's not. We've been doing some research where with ChatGPT, where because you're putting so much information in, it starts to hallucinate. Right, because it's pretty much an information overload. It's a very powerful tool. It can certainly be an advantage, a competitive advantage for any organization, but it also takes some human guidance and proactive governance.
Thank you. And let's get a clap. She's leading the AI revolution. Let's get a clap going.
So what is the role of mentors in your career advancement? This is like a three-part question. How do you find them? How do you leverage them? And what can you do if you don't have any?
I'll take this question. It was alluded to earlier. It's a really important endeavor to really surround yourself with mentors. We can call them mentors, advisors, coaches, champions. I like champions. I also call them the board of my personal directors. Insofar as they are folks, first off, I think the mentors they could be former colleagues, former bosses, they could be childhood friends, and folks whom you can go to that will tell you the truth in terms of good days, bad days, and they are going to be essentially affording a sounding board